Hey, welcome back to another episode of Platn. Today we've got a very special account. My good friend Brucemaan, as you might know him, is a long-time member of the community, supporter of the community, and a friend of mine. I met Bruce about 4 years ago, I believe, and it has been an absolute pleasure to watch Bruce's account grow over that 4 years. Bruce's account's about 7 years old, but I think at least 90% of the trophies that you see on this account will be in the last 4 years. There's some amazing platinums here. Let's dive in, shall we? We're going to be here a minute because there are 459 games to talk about. Let's dive in. Alrighty, and with a whopping 85.48% completion rate, let's get the ball rolling here. We start with 1111 Memories Retold. This is a fantastic which World War is it? I believe it's World War One. World War One retelling. It stars Elijah Wood and has a really interesting art style where everything is watercolored. We then have 112th Seed, which I believe is a bit of an easy peasy there. We then move into 2064 Read Only Memories. This is a visual novel that I believe is relatively straightforward, but does have quite a few ending trophies that you do have to do. We then have a double stack of Plague Tale and then Plague Tale Requiem. Fantastic games. Do expect Project Platinums on both at some point, along with the other 4 million games we're going to be doing. A Tale of Paper is next. This is a fantastic little indie game, very akin to Little Nightmares. Don't let that high platinum rate scare you off. The 76.29%. It is genuinely a fantastic game. It is short. Bruce smashed it out in an hour, but you're sort of looking at anywhere between 1 and 4 hours for this one. We then have A Way Out. Of course, this is the co-op game where two people break out of a prison together. It's made by the same people that did It Takes Two. It's fantastic. Do play this one as well. Abzu is next. Abzu is a fantastic walking sim, but instead of walking, you do a whole lot of diving. Acted Out, a game of charades. It's a co-op party game for charades. It's relatively easy. Bruce smashed it out in just under half an hour. Adam's Venture Origins is probably the worst Uncharted clone I've ever played in my life. This game is absolutely miserable. The game is about 3 hours long. As you can see, it probably bored Bruce to tears because it took him nearly 3 days to complete it. Adventure Time Pirates of the Enchiridion is next. I don't know terribly much about this or Adventure Time in general, to be honest. Adventure Time is sort of one of those series of shows, I guess, that I sort of missed completely. It was one that kind of went under the radar for me, and as a result, I never actually watched it at all, really. Alan Wake is next with both Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2 at 100%. It's nice to see you've cleaned up the recent DLC for Alan Wake 2, Bruce. Both fantastic games. I think the second game is leaps and bounds better than the first game. I actually don't think the first game has aged too well. Definitely gameplay wise, it's not. Story wise, it's fantastic. And then the DLCs suck balls. We then have a game that Bruce and I and our good friend Peter from Missing Collectible, shout out to Missing Collectible, make more content. I dare you, boys. But the three of us did Aliens Fireteam Elite together. I actually have a video on the game on this channel. It's not a particularly good video, but it is there from it being my 200th platinum on the old Symmetry account. I would actually love to do Fireteam Elite as a Project Platinum at some point. So Peter and Bruce, do we assemble the squad again and go bug hunting? Do we bring back the absolute legendary combination of two demolishers and a recon player? I can still hear the words ammo, where ammo in my dreams. Absolutely fantastic game. I don't actually think it's an 8 out of... Oh, yeah, it's probably about an 8 out of 10. It is a genuinely hard game, but that was probably... That would be up there as one of my favorite sort of co-op moments with other people. It was fantastic. It's either this or Call of Duty World War II, both of which were absolutely legendary experiences for me personally. We then have Alone in the Dark next. This is the recent Alone in the Dark. I haven't heard particularly good things. I would like to do it myself at some points. You smashed it out in 3 days. Good work, Brucey. Among the Sleepers next. This is another relatively short, easy game where you play as a little child in sort of a dreamlike horror sort of game. It's good fun. I do recommend this one. We then have a lot of Among Us here with the PS5, PS4, and VR stacks. Who doesn't know Among Us? I still feel like I'm the only person on Earth who has never played Among Us. We then have a double stack of Ape Escape, followed by a double stack of Apex Legends. You love to see it. This is another game I plan to cover on Project Plat at some point, hopefully very soon. I adore Apex personally. There's been some new characters and maps since I last played, so I am looking forward to it. I believe this is our first not completed game here, and we're halfway through the A's. So that's a good start, Brucey. But Arcageddon is here next, and I believe this is a PS5. Is this the car one? It might. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it is. I'm just going to say it's an ultra rare at 1.85% and move on with my life. We then have Ark Survival Evolved. You smash it out in 2 hours. Use the dev commands. You cheeky boy, you. We then move into Assassin's Creed. You love to see it. I love to see it. Good work. But we have Assassin's Creed Russia. You've dipped your toes in. You've dabbled, but you haven't beaten it just yet. Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, 100%. You love to see it. Black Flag. This is another one where we did the multiplayer together. And that was, again, another really enjoyable one. We used the bench method. That is so much faster than Wolfpack. You're probably looking at about 6 to 8 hours as opposed to 30. It's a lot of fun, good memories, but I do know that you're not the biggest fan of Black Flag, which hurts my soul. Mirage is next. You smashed that out in 2 days. That's actually pretty impressive. Mirage is good. I expect to do some content on all of the Assassin's Creeds at some point. Probably not my favorite, probably sort of around the sort of mid-tier mark for me. I think Mirage. Unity's here as well. Smash this out. I believe this was part of Plat Club when you did it in the Discord. Do join below if you want to get involved in our monthly Platinum Club. I believe Lego Hobbit is this month's. It's a good game. Do get around it. But Unity's here. I love Unity personally. I think gameplay-wise, it's probably the best Assassin's Creed. And then we go into probably the worst Assassin's Creed gameplay-wise in Valhalla. Boy, this game is bloated. You do have the Platinum. I believe you've done a little bit of the DLC. I don't think you've done any of the big sort of Siege of Paris or the Wrath of the Druids DLCs, but I think you have done sort of the challenge maps and stuff like that potentially. We then have both Astro games with Bot Rescue Mission and Astro's Playroom, which reminds me that I do need to get the first of those unobtainable trophies. I believe it was released yesterday, so I do need to snap that up real quick myself. Have you done it yet, Brucey? Azura's Wrath is next. You dabbled, you got to 50%, you moved on. We've then got our only, I think there might be a couple breakthrough games on here, the little teasers. This one took 13 minutes, followed by Awesome P, followed by Axiom Verge 2, which is still an ultra rare. I believe the PS5 version was very glitched when this first came out, but I think it is patched now. Axiom Verge is a very fun Metroidvania, I would say. The second game's just okay. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the very first game. We then have Back for Blood twice. You smash this out in 7 months with both versions here, followed by a game I've never heard of in my life called BioQ Hundreds of Melodies. That is indeed a lot of melodies. I can't speak again today. What's different? Jeez, I can't even say that. We then have Balan Wonderworld. I remember you did a stream for this. I remember watching that stream. It was something special. That game looks absolutely punishing. You smashed it out in 2 days. I think you were doing this for a competition. I think you were trying to beat another trophy hunter to see who could do it the fastest, and you smashed them with 2 days. Baseball Breakthrough, it's another breakthrough game, it's another easy peasy. The next games, however, are not easy peasies and are way more impressive, with Arkham Asylum's 100% and also Arkham Knight's 100%. This is a very impressive one right here. I love to see that 100%. I know the million score on the challenge map caused quite a bit of grief while you were going for it, but you smash it out and you love to see it. Arkham Origins is here as well. Obviously, the online multiplayer is now very unobtainable, but you smash it. I think you have them all. Let's do a cheeky check real quick. So the Platinum's unobtainable. Yeah, okay. So you have all of the unobtainable trophies. Good work, Brucey. We then have Arkham VR, followed by both Telltale Batman games. They're okay. They're pretty mid at best for Telltale games, personally. We then get into a beefy Battlefield collection here with Battlefield 1's 100%, 2042 twice. That is 2 more times than I want to do it, personally. Battlefield 3 is one that you've been currently working on, which is good because the servers are obviously shutting, I believe, towards the end of this year. Followed by Battlefield 4, which I think is also shutting. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it's just the PS3 version. And then Battlefield 5. Beat Saber's next. VR, you beat stuff with a saber. It's a good game. Do play it. Ben 10 here, which is actually a surprisingly difficult platinum trophy, I've heard, for a kids game. I've heard this one is actually pretty tricky. We then have Beyond Two Souls. It's a David Cage game. You dipped your toes in. You probably have just the 4,000 endings left. And then actually, it's only one playthrough. Interesting. I'm surprised that a David Cage game is only one playthrough, unless they're not counting partial playthroughs, possibly. We then have Black Mirror, which is a miserable horror game to get through. It's a very slow walking sim of a horror game with probably the worst loading screens of all time. This game's loading screens take about 3 minutes each, and there is a lot of them. It's not a great game. Wouldn't recommend Black Mirror personally. You then got Blasphemous here. You smash that out in 11 hours. Blasphemous is an absolutely fantastic game. It's another Metroidvania with a very cool art style and very cool Spanish influences in its design and its lore. I do genuinely adore Blasphemous. This is another one I wouldn't mind covering on the channel at some point. Blitzbreaker twice, it's an easy peasy, followed by Blood and Truth, which I believe is a VR title, followed by Bloodborne, which is smashed out in 3 years. I adore Bloodborne. I believe you've got pretty much all of the Souls completions. I think the only one off the top of my head, and I could be, obviously we'll see it, but I could be wrong, that you don't have a Sekiro. I think you have, actually, I don't think you've got Dark Souls 1 either. I think Sekiro and Dark Souls 1 are the two you've not quite completed yet in the Soulsborne Kiro series. We then have Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. You dipped your toes in. You moved on to Borderlands, which you did quite recently in June of this year. Smashed out all 81 trophies, and you then backed that up with Borderlands 3, which I believe we did a little bit of together. I think we did that weird Battle Royale DLC together in this. You've then done a little bit of pre-sequel. You've not completed the pre-sequel. I do not blame you at all. We then have Bravo Team, followed by Brink, which of course, this is a beefy platinum trophy here. You did smash it out in 14 hours as well. Brink was it a launch PS3 title? I remember it being absolutely hyped up to the moon and then completely being an utter turd upon release. We then have Broken Age, followed by Bugsnax twice. Fantastic game. Definitely play Bugsnax. Bulletstorm, I believe you've done the multiplayer in Bulletstorm. You just haven't done a lot of the single player. Do correct me if I'm wrong there, Bruce. Followed by Bunny Raiders, which is a relatively easy peasy, but I think I've heard pretty good things about it. I think it is also free on the PlayStation Store as well, which is interesting. Followed by Burly Men at Sea. This was free on PS Plus at some point. You're essentially just 3 dudes on a boat for a couple of hours. It's okay. It's just nothing special in the slightest. We then have a VR 2 game here with Cactus Cowboy Plants at War, with perhaps the worst thumbnail we've seen so far. We then get into one of Bruce's big beefy collections here in the Call of Duties. You're about to see some very nice completions. Let's have a look at this. Advanced Warfare, 100%. Black Ops, 100%. Black Ops 400% in 3 weeks. Do you sleep, Bruce? Do you sleep? Are you okay? Do you need a hug? We then have Cold Wars, 100%. Weirdly enough, not the PS4 version. I'm surprised you've not stacked that, Bruce. Followed by Black Ops 3, which you only have 2 trophies left in. Given that you don't have the platinum there, I'm going to assume the platinum's one of them, and the other trophy that you're needing is the weapon camo grind. I don't even need to open the game. I know that's going to be the truth. We then have, are you saving it for a milestone, actually, Bruce? I am curious as to why you've not smashed this out, besides the camos being absolutely miserable to do. We then have Ghosts, 100%, Infinite Warfare's 100%, Modern Warfare's 100%, Modern Warfare 2's, 2 remasters, 3's, that's the original PS3 one. Sorry, these get confusing for me. Modern Warfare 2 on the PlayStation 5, 100%, which means you've also got that dumb DLC for Modern Warfare 3 remastered, because all of the Call of Duty games are now the Call of Duty app or something, which means they're all going to be DLCs moving forwards, which is stupid. We then have Modern Warfare Remastered, followed by Vanguard, which is probably the worst game in the entire series, followed by the absolutely underrated gem in World War II, which is a fantastic one right there. So, I think off the top of my head, the only two you are missing are Call of Duty Classic and Black Ops Declassified. I'm curious, Bruce, are you planning on doing either of those at some point? We then have Carrion next, Double Stack. This is a fun game where you play a fleshy glue monster, goo monster rather, that eats everyone and grows bigger with each eating. It's a really fun game. It's a really short game as well. Definitely one I'm planning on doing at some point again. Followed by Cat Quest, which is another. I'd like to do Cat Quest 1 and 2 at some point. You smash this one out in 7 hours. We then have Breakthrough Gaming Arcade, followed by Celeste, which you did in 5 hours. Ooh, that's pretty cheeky. I reckon you use the assist mode for Celeste there. I reckon I'm onto you, Brucey. I'm onto you. We then have Chicken Police, which is a very fun noir sort of game where everyone are animals. It's a great one. Followed by Chicory, which is another fantastic game where you do a lot of painting as you navigate the world and sort of discover yourself, I would say, your own sort of personal identity to overcome a bunch of boss fights. We then have Clockwork Tales of Glass, followed by Code Vein, which you dipped your toes in and then dipped right back out on. Conan Exiles is next, with only a couple trophies missing, followed by another relatively short game in Concept Destruction. Concrete Genie is next, which is actually the game that I met Bruce on. I was live streaming Concrete Genie, and Bruce was my first viewer. So shout out, Bruce. Thank you for the support even back then. We then have Control Twice. Control's a fantastic game. It's in the same universe as Alan Wake. Fantastic. Highly recommend. Cooking Mummy Cookstar. That's an interesting name. This is one of those. I believe Cooking Mama was originally a Nintendo DS game. Essentially, you just make a bunch of recipes with stuff as it becomes available on the screen for you. We then have Costume Quest, followed by a lot of Crash Bandicoots with only Warped complete here. You've sort of, it looks like what you've done is you've sort of beaten the story and started to work on the miscellaneous stuff without necessarily potentially going for the relics. We then have Creeks, which is a sort of weird, relatively short but kind of cool puzzle game, followed by the VR game Creed Rise of Glory with a juicy ultra rare. You dipped your toes in here. We got another VR game here with Crossfire Sierra Squad, which is a cool one to see, followed by one of the Paugy games with Crypto. We then have The First Crisis. I am curious, Bruce, do you plan on doing the rest of the series? I do think The First Crisis is probably the best of the three, and also the least buggy in terms of these remasters. We then have Cult of the Lamb. It looks like you've done everything but the most recent DLC based on that. I think it does only have 6 trophies. I do know this game bugged on you quite a bit, hence the 5 months when you probably could have done the platinum in about a week. Fantastic sort of base builder cross with roguelike. That's a fantastic one. I do highly recommend that one to people. Followed by Cyberpunk Twice. You have the platinum in Cyberpunk on the PS5 version, and then just you've just dipped your toes in on the PS4 version. In fact, I just noticed you actually have the 100% in Cyberpunk 2077. That's another game I would love to do myself at some point. Alrighty, and next up we have Dante's Inferno, which you've done the unobtainable trophies, which means that this one is completable for you, which is very nice to see. We then have Dark Arcana the Carnival and Dark Cloud. I believe both of these were PS2 games that were ported to the PS4, followed by some Dark Souls here, some juicy Dark Souls in Scholar of the First Sin 3, and just a little bit of remastered. So I was correct. You've done the platinums in 2 and 3, but not the first game there. Day of the Tentacle, this is a LucasArts point and click game that's fantastic, followed by Daymare, which was a recommendation from me. This is very this is very discount Resident Evil. Yeah, it's very discount Resident Evil, but it's good. I like it. There's a lot of charm to it, and probably some of the funniest comments in dialogue of all time in gaming. Days Gone's 100%. This is very impressive here. You've done the challenge mode, which you love to see, followed by another very impressive completion here in Dead by Daylight, with all 3 stacks here. The first one, the PS5 one, and then the additional trophies on the PS4. You love to see this. Bruce is a very good Dead by Daylight player. We then have Dead Island 2, which you've smashed out the full 100% here, followed by Dead Space Remake, which is a fantastic game that I'm looking forward to playing again very soon. Spoilers. Death Stranding is next. You played a little bit of, followed by a fantastic indie game here in Death's Door, which is one that I would recommend to literally anyone. Deathloop and Deep Rock are next. These are another 2 that you've sort of been working towards. And will be very impressive completions when you do eventually get them both. Deliver Us the Moon is next. I am curious, Bruce, are you planning on doing Deliver Us Mars at some point? Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, The Hinokami Chronicles. I'm going to pretend that I got that correct in one go. We then have Demon Souls, another 100% here. You'll love to see it. You smashed this out around... no, it's about a year after it came out, isn't it? Yeah, it is, because it took you 9 months. We then have Destiny 2. You've got 1 trophy left. I'm assuming this is a raid of some description, potentially. Destruction All-Stars is next. A juicy 1.52% rarity. This is a car... a car arena sort of game, I guess, which I've heard very mixed things at best on. Detroit Become Human, smash this one out. This is one I could not do in 5 days. I would need quite a lot of sleep in between. We then have Deus Ex Mankind Divided. You've also dabbled in Devil May Cry 5, which is a game that I am very confident you will be able to smash out at some point down the line. We then have Diablo 4, which you wrapped up recently, followed by Disco Elysium, which is a fantastic story game that I'd recommend to most people. Although personally, I will say I was very let down by the ending in this game. We then have Dishonored 2. It's the only Dishonored you've got here. You doubled your toes in. This is another one I'll be doing at some point very soon. Divine Knockout is next. This is another battle royale sort of thing. I think Divided Knockout might have actually been made by the people that did Fortnite, if I'm correct. Don't Knock Twice, relatively short indie horror game. It's pretty average. Followed by Donut Country, fantastic game where you eat everything with a giant hole. Doom's 100% you'll love to see. Doom Eternal's next. I know you weren't the biggest fan of Doom Eternal. I believe I sort of felt very similar myself, followed by Doom VR, followed by a little bit of Downwell, a little bit of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Dragon Quest Builders you smashed out during Plat Club for that month. This was, I believe, our first Platinum Club, and a very fun sort of Dragon Quest meets Minecraft sort of thing. Dragon Quest 9 is next, which is a game I'd love to do at some point, followed by a couple easier ones here with Dreaming Sarah and Drunken Fist. Dying Light is next. This is one I'd love to see you platinum personally, followed by 2 stacks of Elden Ring. I am curious, Bruce, have you done the DLC recently? Shadow of the Erd Tree. Enigmatis is next. These are fun sort of I Spy sorts of games where you just find a bunch of items around a map, followed by Enter the Gungeon and Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two. Dabbled in both. Erica is next. A lot of endings to Erica, but you did smash them out in under a day. Escape Academy, fantastic game. I believe this is one of the games where you were a first achiever at some point in its history, followed by Evil Dead, which is a relatively fun sort of Dead by Daylight sort of clone that I've heard pretty good things about. This is one that I've thought about doing myself at some point, but I think if I was going to do one of them, it would probably be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one. We then have Evil West, which... very fun, unashamedly sort of PS3 inspired hack and slash beat 'em up where you are in the Wild West and beat the absolute snot out of vampires. We've got F1 2022 a little bit here. It's apparently got some unobtainable trophies, followed by all of the Fall Guy stacks. You'll love to see that. Fallen Legion, you've dabbled your toes in. You've only got 2 Fallouts here with Fallout 4 and Shelter. I am curious, are you going to jump on the 76 train at some point? We then have Fantasy Strike, which is a beefy platinum at 0.71%. This is sort of a free-to-play beat 'em up, kind of akin to like Mortal Kombat and stuff like that, fighting game, I guess. But I believe you need the DLC to earn the platinum. So it's kind of like the base game is free, but you need to pay for the DLC to earn the platinum, I believe. We then only have 2 Far Cry's here with Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 6. This is another game we did together. We did the co-op missions in Far Cry 6 together. They were not very fun. We then get a few non-completions here, most of which are Final Fantasies, with Faye, obviously not a Final Fantasy, but 7 Remake, most of the way done. I assume you probably just have some grindy stuff in the hardcore playthrough. We got 10 HD, followed by 14 on the PS5, which is a game you are currently working on, 14 on the PS4, which is yeah, I mean, you've been working on both very heavily. 176 trophies. That is a lot of trophies. 15 you've got here. Comrades is obviously unobtainable unless you do a reverse patch to play that mode before they made it standalone. And then you've got Final Fantasy 16 at 100%, which I think you did really enjoy that one. We then have Finger Fitness, which I believe is a VR game. I'm not entirely sure there. Followed by Firewall, it's a VR first-person shooter, followed by First Class Trouble Twice, which is an Among Us clone, another breakthrough game here with football, followed by a indie sort of third-person shooter it's okay, called Foreclose. It has a really cool premise where mega corporations own your identity, so what happens when they go bankrupt? But the gameplay was pretty average at best on this one. You've then got Fortnite, which you are slowly chipping away at, you absolute madman, followed by 2 stacks of Freddy Spaghetti. Friday the 13th, you were tragically close on before the server shut. That one definitely hurts to see. We then have Frogger Returns, followed by Full Throttle, which I think is a sort of racing game of some description. We then have 1 stack of Fury, which is a fantastic game. I think you were originally going for a fastest achiever on this one. I'm not entirely sure of that though. Gababuchi was a free-to-play game on PS Plus where you essentially just ate a bunch of squares. You smashed this one out in 40 minutes. Telltale's Game of Thrones, followed by Gang Beasts. It's a fantastic co-op game where you essentially just have to beat one another up until there's a winner. Garfield Kart Racing is next. You smash this one out in a week. Some of these I didn't know you'd even played, to be perfectly honest with you. Genshin Impact, you've started, you've dipped your toes in. I am curious if this is one you do plan on going back to at some point, or if that 200-hour tag is a little bit much given the size of the old backlog. Ghost Giant is next. This is another game I've never heard of personally, followed by Ghost of Tsushima. Twice with the 100%. That's interesting. I actually didn't know that these PC tags were showing up on PSMP yet. That's kind of cool that the PC trophies are now showing up here as well. Legends mode with Ghost of Tsushima, the raid especially, is something we did together. This is another very proud achievement that yourself, Peter from Missing Collectible again, and Cat Lord from the Discord all did together. This was quite a fun experience here. You've then got 2 stacks of Ghost Runner 1. I am curious if you plan on doing Ghost Runner 2 at some point. Ghostwire Tokyo, you smash most out of. This is an open world game set in Tokyo. It's got a really cool premise, but far too many collectible trophies. Goat Sim 3, 100%. You love to see it. Only 2 God of War completions. I am kind of surprised to not see God of War 3 here. We then also have a little bit of God of War Ascension, which is one of the sort of spin-off ones. We then have Golf with Your Friends, 100%, which is a good one to see here. Very fun game to actually play with your friends. Goosebumps, this is a point-and-click adventure. Gotham Knights 100%. This is made by the same people as the Arkham series, only probably a lot less good in terms of the quality. It's one I've debated doing myself, but I probably never will. Gran Turismo, it's a racing game from a series of notoriously hard racing games. We then have the 100% in GTA 5, which you love to see. This is fantastic, followed by Green Hell, which is a survival game where you're in the Amazon and you have to build stuff to survive. It's kind of akin to like The Forest. Very fun game, very difficult platinum actually, with a 1.96% completion rate. Grey Hill, relatively quick indie horror game that I've heard reasonably good things about, followed by Grim Fandango. This is another point and click that's very, very good. Gree is next. Gree's a fun sort of side-scrolling artful indie game with emotions and stuff. I really enjoyed this one. This is one I wouldn't mind doing again at some point. We then have Gun Club VR, which you've dabbled in, followed by a couple easy ones in the double stack of Gut Whale. You then have Hades, which is a game I need to give Hades a proper chance at some point. You smash this one out in 7 months. I don't know whether or not that's because the boons were kind to you or not. We then have Heavy Fire Afghanistan. This is a tank game on the PS3. Followed by Hell Let Loose, which is a very impressive completion here. Hell Let Loose is a first-person World War II game. It's kind of more realistic simulator, whilst also still obviously being a multiplayer game. I really enjoyed Hell Let Loose from what I played. The trophies are very grindy. There's a lot of do certain thing 5 million times. There's a DLC trophy for destroying 50 Jeeps, where in a match there might be 3 Jeeps at max over the course of a natural match, most of which you're not going to see. So it is a very, very grindy game, but you did smash the platinum out in 3 days. I think you are one of the fastest achievers, if not the fastest. Helldivers 2, you smashed this one out in 2 days as well. Fantastic game. I love the first game. I love the little bit of Helldivers 2 that I have played. I would love to do a bit more of it at some point. Hentai vs. Evil is next. Fair enough, Bruce. Fair enough. Followed by Heroes Trials, and then a bunch of Hitmans here with Hitman 2, which you are slowly chipping away at as of this year, and then also the 100% for both stacks of Hitman 3, which means you've essentially already done the 100% for Hitman 2. We then have Hitman Go, which is sort of a like a tile slider sort of puzzle game. It's interesting. There's also a Lara Croft one that I'll be interested to see if we see at some point. Hoa's next. Hoa is a relatively simple but also pretty fun platforming game, followed by Hoggo 2, Hogwarts Legacy, which you did at launch. You absolute madman. All four houses getting to the map room is definitely a little bit of a slog. We then have Hollow Knights 100%, followed by Hood Outlaws and Legends, which is another very impressive boost that you have done. This is another sort of, I guess, multiplayer grindy sort of game with a juicy 2.36% completion. Horizon Forbidden West is next. You've done 100% on the PS4 version. You are chipping away at the PS5 version, which obviously has an extra DLC, I believe, doesn't it? Is Burning Shores? Is it Burning Shores? I think it is. Is just on the PS5. Hot Shots Golf, followed by Hotline Miami, which is a game you got very mad in. It scared me a lot. We then have another game we boosted together, Hunt Showdown. This was I think fairly enough, this was a pretty miserable experience. I think that's pretty fair to say. The initial sort of game match that you play is very, very fun. And then the actual game sort of sinks in, and then you become aware that you are going to be playing a very rough experience for the next 150 hours. I'm Dead is next, followed by Expect You to Die, IQ Intelligent Cube, Ice Age Scrat's Nutty Adventure, which is a platformer based on the Ice Age series, Immortals Phoenix Rising. You've done the platinum, not the 100%. I will say that 100% is an absolute slog to get through. In Sound Mind is next. This is a weird sort of horror game that I believe you did recommend quite highly. We then have have two infamous games here with First Light and Second Son, the ones from the PS4 onwards. Both very fun games, both very different games. One of them is very heavily focused on its open world and story. The other one's more sort of, it does have an open world, but a very quick story, and then sort of more focused on it as a arena shooter. Infestors next, followed by Affliction, which is a relatively short but kind of fun horror game, I will say. Injustice 2, very impressive completion here at a 1.89%. This is obviously a DC fighting game. We then have Inscription, which I think you just have Kelsey's mod left, a couple of the trophies in that, followed by Inside, fantastic game made by the same people that did Limbo. Insomnus is another indie horror game that's not particularly great. Yeah, it certainly only takes about 30-40 minutes to actually complete. You're essentially just running from point to point in a house while things sort of pretend they can do stuff to you, but then blatantly can't. Two Stacks of It Takes Two is next. Fantastic game, one that I look forward to doing myself at some point. Followed by It's Spring Again, Jack and Jill DX, Jack 2 with the debug menu pop there, Jazz Punk, which is a fantastic, absolutely fantastic game. It is very short, but it's also very funny. It's sort of a parody of spy movies like think James Bond, for example. Job Simulator twice, you'll love to see that there. Followed by Journey to the Savage Planet, which is another game we did together. I know that the only trophy you have left are based on doing the hardcore mode there. Judgment is next. I believe this is made by the same people that did the Yakuza series. I think this one's set in a school from memory, a Japanese high school, followed by Jumanji, which I think is a really bad twin stick shooter, if I'm not mistaken by that one. Jumping Splash is next. This is I believe this was a PS1 game that's been ported to the PS5, followed by the Just Cause 3. Very meh game. I adore Just Cause 2. Wasn't as big a fan of Just Cause 3, if I'm being honest. We then have Kena Bridge of Spirits. Fantastic game. Highly recommend. Definitely planning on covering on the channel at some point. Kiwi, which is a co-op game. I think it's kind of a rhythm co-op game, if I'm not mistaken, where you've got to jump on certain platforms at certain times. Killer Frequency, I'm not entirely sure what this is. If it is a horror game, Bruce, do let me know if this one is worth playing, because it has definitely flown under my radar. Killing Floor 2, it's fantastic. I am kind of surprised that you've had the 100% since October, because that's going on nearly a year without a Killing Floor 2 trophy. Have they finally stopped releasing Killing Floor 2 trophies for a very long time, like a good number of years? There would just be another DLC with another trophy, and that other trophy was to essentially just grind out collectibles on a map over and over. Very fun game. This is another one I'm very tempted to cover on the channel at some point. In fact, I probably will. I'm looking at probably Scare Ritual first in terms of multiplayer sort of stuff, but Killing Floor 2 might make it on at some point as well. We then have some Killzone here with Shadowfall, the spin-off sort of more multiplayer, essentially the multiplayer but standalone in Intercept, and then Mercenary, all of which are unobtainable due to server closures. Kingdom Hearts is next. You've done a little bit of Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3, and Rechain of Memories. Kingdoms of Arcadia, you smashed out in just under an hour and a half, which is nice to see. Knockout City, this is a sort of dodgeball-based arena shooter battle royale thing. I remember you working very hard on both of these stacks. Back in the day when this server was announced to be shut. I think you started this like a month before server closure, if I'm not mistaken. Ladders of Paugi twice here, followed by Lake, which is an interesting sort of walking sim game where essentially you're just a postie driving around day to day delivering mail while sort of a little story plays out. It's okay. Fun fact, you can skip the dialogue. There is a setting for it if the game becomes mind-numbingly boring. Lara Croft Go, as we said with Hitman Go, this is a tile slider. It's a cool one to see here, followed by Laser League, which is a very impressive completion. I know, again, this is one you did just before the server closures. You boosted this one out, which is nice to see. Last of June is an indie game that is very sad. Again, another interesting one that's got a watercolor sort of art style to it. Yeah, this game is very sad. The story in this is very miserable. It was on PS Plus. It is one that I would recommend people play if they do want sort of an artsy sort of perspective on things. It is a cool one. Two Stacks of the Last Stop. This is sort of a Telltale style of game, but played through the eyes of three different characters. It's okay. It's 5 out of 10 at best. Late Shift. This is sort of a movie game where you make decisions that then sort of play out the next sequence of the movie. Laserfair 2, walking sim horror game. This is a good one. This is interesting. It's sort of set on a boat in I believe the 1930s, which is an interesting setting. I do like Layers of 2 quite a bit. I need to play the new Layers of Fear at some point. Legends of Talia Arcadia twice. You smash these out. These are obviously easy peasies with 1.5 minutes and then 34 seconds, followed by Lego Brawls, which is the kind of, I don't think it was free to play, but it's the kind of fighting game thing that Lego pushed out and then immediately abandoned, followed by Marvel Avengers, which you've nearly 100%ed, Lego Movie, the video game. This is one that I plan on doing at some point. And then the two Star Wars ones with Skywalker Saga being completed in just over a week. That is too short. Are you okay, Bruce? That game is absolutely miserable to platinum. Liza P is next. You smash this one out in 3 days. This is obviously a Souls-like, and is a very, very good game from what I've heard. This is one I would love to do myself at some point, followed by some Life is Strangers here with 1 and True Colors. No Before the Storm, no 2. Probably fair enough, in all honesty. I do really like True Colors, though. That's one that I would definitely recommend to people if you do like that sort of style of game. We then have Linger in the Shadows, Little Adventures on the Prairie, and of course the ever-brilliant Little Nightmares 2. Little Big Planet 3, Loco Roco Midnight Carnival with 1 hour and 5 minutes. You've then done a tiny little bit of Lords of the Fallen, which is a little bit too much Lords of the Fallen. That game is very miserable to get through. It's essentially Dark Souls 2, but slower. Lost Judgment, this is another one of those Yakuza spin-offs. I believe this is the sequel to the other one. I've forgotten what the other one's called off the top of my head, but I believe this is the sequel. Lost Words Beyond the Page, this is a beautiful little indie game that sort of deals with loss and imagination, which is an interesting combination. It was free on Plus. I believe it has been taken off PS Plus at some point, but it is a genuinely good game. This is one I definitely would recommend to people at some point. Mad Max, this is unobtainable. It hurts my soul to see. Obviously the server's shut, which then meant that the tracking for the scrap and the challenges is no longer applicable. Madden NFL 22 is next. You smash this out in 6 hours for a 2% ultra rare. That is very impressive. I know this game is very, very glitchy. We then have Madison next. This is a sort of walking sim horror game that is pretty spooky. It is also a generally pretty good game. You do have to do multiple playthroughs, however, followed by only Mafia 1. I would like to see Mafia 2 and 3 at some point there, Bruce, but it is a very good completion all the same. That race on Legendary is quite tricky. It's rough. It is rough. Magus is next, followed by Maneater, Baby Shark. You've done it twice, to be fair. Marquette is next. This is another puzzle game that sort of, I believe this was free on PS Plus in sort of the early days of the PS5. We then have Martha is Dead. This is another walking sim horror game that has some very disturbing stuff happening in it, and a story that makes, well, it hurts the brain. This one hurts the brain, definitely. We then have 2 stacks of Marvel's Avengers, followed by Guardians of the Galaxy, followed by, all of the Spider-Man plats in Spider-Man twice with the remaster as well, followed by Spider-Man 2's 100% there in March. I am curious, did you use the debug menu or do the playthrough yourself? And then of course Miles Morales twice as well. So all of the Spider-Mans there, that's a really cool one to see. We then also have all of the Mass Effects here, 1, 2, 3, and Legendary Edition, which is kind of some additional trophies for all the games as well. Medal of Honor PS3, you did this just before the shutdown. Pretty fun, but also pretty generic Medal of Honor game and just first-person shooter in general. Definitely Frontline and Airborne, and some of those ones are considerably better games, I would say. We then have Medieval Remake, which you've dipped your toes into, probably gotten to the end of the story and then just not done any cleanup. Meet Your Maker was a really fun base builder that came out on PS Plus last year. I assume at this point it's got to be pretty dead, but it was genuinely a very fun game at the time. We then have Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes, and The Phantom Pain, which you've done a little bit of both. And then also Peace Walker here, followed by Metal Slug 3. Only one Metro game here, and only sort of a little bit of the trophies in Metro Exodus, which I would say personally is the weakest of the Metro games. We then have Middle of Earth, Shadow of Mordor's platinum, but not 100%. I know Hunted the Wild and one of the other trophies in the DLC are very, very tricky. We then have all of the stacks of Minecraft here, which you'll love to see, followed by Minute, which is a really fun sort of adventure game, I guess, side-scrolling adventure game where you have a minute before your run resets, you die at the end of a minute, but you do keep all your items and any shortcuts you've unlocked. So that is a fun one. I do highly recommend that one to people. That's another one that we did do on Platinum Club at some points, I believe a couple months ago. We then have Mirror's Edge Catalyst, followed by MLB The Show, Monopoly Madness, which is a fun sort of Monopoly game that I think is free on PS Plus. It's one that I've tossed up doing it at some points. Another beefy completion here with Monster Hunter Rise, and then you back it up with a very impressive Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 11 twice. You'd love to see that, Bruce. Moving Out 2 is next. This is a fun sort of co-op experience where you move boxes around, kind of akin to what's the cooking game? Overcooked. We then have Murder Soul Suspect, which is a game I've platinumed twice and still have no real memory of what happened in this game. You're a ghost detective trying to solve a bunch of murders that were happening while you were alive, while also trying to solve your own murder. We then also have all of the My Name is Mayos here with 2 stacks of the first game, 2 and 3. That is a whole lot of mayo. NBA 2K20, unobtainable, It Hurts to See, followed by 2 dabbled Need for Speeds in Payback and Unbound. Need for Speed series is one I would love to potentially cover on the channel at some point as well, so do let me know if that's something you guys would like to see. We then have Neverwinter, which is a free-to-play and very beefy game. It is nice to see that all of the trophies are now obtainable. I know through periodically at times, not all of them are obtainable. We then have Nexomon, followed by 2 stacks of Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, Nier Autonoma, then a couple of Neos that you've sort of done a little bit of. I'm curious if this is a series you do plan on going back to at some point by any chance. No Man's Sky is the same sort of deal, although I do think you've done the hard trophy in No Man's Sky. I think you have gotten to the center of the universe on the hardest difficulty. We then have Oddworld Soulstorm, which you've done a little bit of, followed by Old Man's Journey, which is a fun side-scrolling, sort of relatively short and sweet game. Ollie Ollie World is a tricky skateboarding game where you've got to do a lot of stunts and stuff for points and do a lot of time trials and things like that. We then have Olympic Games Tokyo 2020, which is another one I had no idea you'd ever played. Omega Strikers, followed by One Escape and Onrush, which is now unobtainable. I know this was a sort of fast-paced racing game where you've got power-ups and things like that. Onrush is a funny one where I only ever heard really bad things or really good things about this game. There was never any in between. Operation Tango, followed by Outriders. You've just done the platinum. You haven't done the 100% for this one. I know that the Outriders is a pretty fun looter shooter, I believe. Then got some Overcooked, which I mentioned before with Moving Out, followed by Overwatch 2, which is a very impressive 100% here. Paladins, same deal, very impressive 100%. Papers, Please, you've dabbled at. This is a game that I would love to see you complete personally. And then we get into some big beefy Personas here with Persona 3 Reloaded, which you did very recently. Persona 5, which you've done most of, followed by 5 Royale twice. And then, of course, Strikers to round out our Personas. Pick a Pix Classic 2, relatively easy, sort of straightforward Vita game where I think you just draw stuff. Pinball Heroes, Pinkman Plus, Pistol Whip, and then of course the ever mighty Placid Plastic Duck Simulator. This is another one I've tossed up doing myself for the channel at some point as sort of a light-hearted sort of one. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 is a cool one to see, as is PlayStation VR Worlds. I'm curious if you do plan on getting 100% in this one at some point. I do think it is still possible. It is a juicy 0.61%. Obviously, tragically, Plants vs. Zombies is no longer possible due to that mode being shut down. I think it was daily quests or something that is now unobtainable with that one. We then have Predator Hunting Grounds, which is a game Bruce and I did together. I really like this game. I really, really do like Predator Hunting Grounds. This is a very fun game where one person's the predator. You've then got a team of, I believe it is 5 people, and the predator has to hunt them down. It's a good fun one. Highly recommend. Maybe one I'll do for the channel at some point. Who knows? Pretty Girls Klondike Solitaire, I believe, is a solitaire game, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm just basing that off the name, if I'm being brutally honest. We then have Proteus, which is a very fun indie sort of throwback to Doom. Highly recommend this one. Psychonauts 2 and Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin, followed by Quick Math, followed by Racing Breakthrough. It's another breakthrough game. Rage 2, you've done a little bit of. This is another one I'm curious if you do plan on going back and cleaning up at some point. I know the collectibles in this one are annoying in that they kind of move around the map and aren't tracked on the map, which makes things a bit tricky. Followed by Rain. Some Ratchet and Clanks with the reboot and Rift Apart. Red Dead Redemption 2, you've done most of the base game, most of the single player, I believe. I think it's mostly just the multiplayer you have left for this one. Red Johnson's Chronicles 1 Against All, I've never heard of in my life. Followed by both Remnants, which I love to see here. Remnant 2, obviously, and then From the Ashes. These are very fun Souls-likes, but with guns. Highly, highly recommend these games to anyone. To be honest, they are fantastic. We then have the Resident Evils, and you love to see them. It's juicy. We've got some good ones here. Resident Evil 0 started, made some progress in. I'm sure you'll probably come back to this in sort of October of this year. You've then got Resident Evil Zero's Platinum, which is a very impressive one to have there. Definitely one of the more sort of tedious and annoying Resident Evils to do. We then have Resident Evil 2 twice, which you love to see. 3 twice, which you love to see. 4's just the Platinum. You don't have the DLC yet. It does look like, based on the trophies you have done, it looks like you might have played through the DLC, but you haven't gone back for the professional run or something like that, based on that tally of trophies. Resident Evil 5 is a game we did together that is very, very fun. Resident Evil 6, we were doing the DLC together on at some points. Not a great game, if we're being honest there. You then have the 100% for 7, which is amazing to see. Good work there. Followed by RE Verse, which is an absolutely miserable one to do. Resistance, which is even more miserable to do. Resident Evil Village, which of course is 8, and then we round out the Resident Evils with Operation Raccoon City. So you're really only missing some of the side stuff, to be honest. You're missing the Revelations games and Code Veronica. We then have Returnal smashed out at 100%, which is fantastic. This has been an absolute block of bangers, which you do love to see. Followed by Rick and Morty, which is our first non-completion in a little while there. Riders Republic is next. This is an Ubisoft BMX sort of game, sort of akin to like MX vs AVT Unleashed, but kind of mixed with things like Steep. This is another one I would be curious to do at some points. Riff Raccoon twice. Road 96 is a very fun indie game where Essentially, you play as a teenager trying to make it to the border of a fictional country to escape that country, and you kind of got to manage your resources whilst also dealing with the various scenarios. All of the stories played completely in random orders, so you'll see different scenarios on different runs. And if you fail, you lose the character and you start again. It's a very interesting concept. I do love Road 96. I do plan on doing it and the sequel again at some point. We then have Roblox, which you smashed out earlier this year, followed by Rogue Company twice, Rogue Warrior, and then 2 Stacks of Rollerdrome, which is another fantastic indie game where you're in a death arena trying to rack up scores while killing loads of roller skating dudes. Rumbleverse, this was another sort of battle royale sort of game that shut down around the time that you did this. We did smash that out together reasonably fast. Sackboy Big Adventure's a cool one to see here, followed by 2 Saint Rows with 4 and 3. I'm curious if you are planning on doing the reboot at some point by any chance. Succubus, and Succubus 2, followed by a lot of Sam and Max here. Yeah, I think that's all of them there. I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, followed by the second series here with all 5 episodes of those as well. Seasons After the Fall is another fun one to see here. It's sort of a side-scrolling adventure game where you got to wake up the elements of the forest to bring back balance to the forest, which is a cool concept. Secret Neighbors, a spin-off to Hello Neighbor. I know that you did this with a bunch of people and that it was pretty miserable. We then also have Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which I believed you hadn't completed. So that means I'm correct. You have done all of them but Sekiro and Dark Souls 1. How good am I? Big brain memory right there. We then have Severed, followed by Shadow Warrior 3, which is a very fun Doom sort of clone. It's also the easiest of the Shadow Warrior games. I believe the other two are both pretty difficult ultra rares, actually. We then have Sifu. You've done the Platinum and I believe some of the challenge maps. But I do know that some of those challenge maps are actually legitimately very, very difficult. We then have Silent Hill 2 and 3 HD. You've done 3, you're still working through 2. Silver Chains is another relatively quick, and it's an okay horror game. I don't mind it. We then have another breakthrough game with skateboarding here, followed by Skater's Master Checo. I've never heard of that in my life. Sly Cooper and the Phoebius Raccoonus, followed by Smile for Me, which I will not do. I never smile on camera. We then have Smite, which is another very impressive 100% here, one that you took over a year, which is a lot of dedication for, followed by Sniper Elite 4, which is another game we did together, which was a lot of fun. Highly recommend Sniper Elite 4 with another person. It was an absolute blast. Sniper Elite 5, another very good game. We played a little bit of this together, but it looks like you've gone on and done quite a lot more solo. I feel abandoned. We then have Sonic here with Sonic Frontiers and Sonic the Fighters, followed by all of the South Parks with South Park Snow Day, which I think, again, you're one of the fastest achievers for, and one of the first achievers for potentially as well. And then, of course, the Fractured Butthole and the Stick of Truth, another breakthrough game, followed by Spiritfarer, which you've only done a little bit of. I believe you weren't the biggest fan of this one. And then all of the SpongeBobs here with Battle for Bikini Bottoms and both stacks of the Cosmic Shape. All 3 Spyros are next, and you love to see these, of course. This is another trilogy I definitely plan to cover on the channel at some point. Maybe very soon. I might do the first game very soon, actually, because I do know they are relatively short, and I got to fit some short games around some of the long games that are in the work. Definitely some long ones cooking at the moment in the old simmy pot. We then have quite a few Star Wars games which you like to see. Battlefront 2, this was, I believe, the first game we played together way back in the day, so 2021. Although I think we did it in 2020 together. We did some of the multiplayer together. We then have Episode 1 Racer. Now, you did that in an hour, which means you used the cheats, you cheeky boy, you. We then have 2 stacks of Fallen Order, which you like to see. And then, of course, classic Star Wars Battlefront. I still adore Battlefront 1 and 2 from the early 2000s. They were my childhood. I spent far too much time in there. And then we round them out with Republic Commando. I am curious, Bruce, as to why you haven't done Jedi Survivor yet, because it is good. I don't think it is as good as Fallen Order, but it is definitely still a very good game. We then have Stardew Valley, which you did earlier this year in a week, which is insane. I believe you might have done that co-op potentially. We then have Starwell, which is another juicy ultra rare platinum at 0.95%, with some very grindy trophies like killing another person 1,000 times and things like that. We then have Steep, which is the Ubisoft sort of mountain boarding game. That's another one I wouldn't mind doing at some point, but I do know that it is fairly grindy. Stranded Deep, you took advantage of that glitch that was there for a while, where people could just join a multiplayer world and pop all the trophies. That does hurt my soul, as I did have to suffer through that game legit, and trust me, it was actually suffering. We then have Stray next, brilliant game where you play as a cat, followed by Stumble Guys, which is a really fun sort of Fall Guys clone, I believe. Subnautica twice, sort of underwater adventure game where you can build bases and things like that. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, you smashed this out in 3 days. I'm curious, Bruce, would you recommend this one? This is one that I've sort of tossed up maybe playing, but also probably not playing. We then have Sumatra Fate of Yandi twice, followed by Super Bomberman R Online, which is a very impressive one to have. Super Destronaut DX, Super Exploding Zoo, Super Ball Monkey Banana Mania. I think I stuffed that name up at some point in there, but it hurt my brain to read. Super Street was a very mediocre racing game, followed by Super Weekend Mode, Super Hot VR, and Siberia. We then get into the Siphon Filters here with Siphon Filter 1 and 3. No 2, however, and I don't believe, is it Dark Fates or Dark Shadows is the spin-off. We then have Tacoma, which is an okay game. It's sort of an investigating game where you're trying to work out what happened to the crew of a spaceship. Tales of Arise, followed by Tape Unveil the Memories, which is another sort of fun horror game that I believe has quite a few endings, which I think is all you have left between you and the Platinum Trophy. Tearaway Unfolded's another game that I've sort of always wanted to do myself. It looks like a very fun sort of platforming game, but with a lot of like collage and bits of cutout paper and stuff making up the graphics. Tekken 7 and Tekken 8, very fun fighting games. You smashed both of them out in very little time at all. Telling Lies is another sort of video movie sort of game where you just sort of watch a lot of scenes. Tentacular, I have no idea what that is, and I'm not going to question it. The Artful Escape twice. That's a choice. Once is probably enough for me. It's an okay game. You essentially just go sideways and play songs, and that's kind of all that happens the entire game. The Bard's Tale, followed by Callisto Protocol. You've done a lot of the DLCs. I'm curious what you are missing. I assume what you are missing is mostly just runs back through the base game and not necessarily the Horde mode or the other DLC. We then have The Council, which is another Telltale-esque sort of game. This one's got some interesting concepts, but it does drag on quite a bit. We then have the Dark Pictures here with Man and Medan, which is probably, in my opinion, the weakest of the Dark Pictures games. Definitely the roughest to replay, followed by the VR game with Switchback. We then have Elder Scrolls Online, which you've done quite a bit of so far, which obviously is a very beefy endeavor there, 172 trophies. My bad for getting you into that one. Even within 2, it's nice to see that you do have this platinum trophy. I know that you did struggle quite a bit to get one of the trophies to not glitch on you. I believe it was the one for getting all of the weapons. Took quite a bit of time to unlock, so that is nice to finally see that it has unlocked. We then have the finals, which you are actively working on. I know there are some trophies for getting like 1 billion coins or something, currency, which are very, very grindy. So I do look forward to seeing that platinum for you at some point. The Forgotten City, this is a fun one. It started life as a Skyrim mod. Fun game where you sort of explore a lost Roman city, and the sort of sci-fi sort of stuff that runs behind the scenes. The Gardens Between is next, which is a very interesting sort of puzzle game, followed by House of the Dead and House of the Dead Remake, which is smashed out in 2 hours. We then get quite a bit of Last of Us here with Won twice, including the one with multiplayer, so good work there. And Last of Us 2, all at 100%, which is very juicy. Light Brigade is a VR shooter, followed by The Medium, which is a blooper team game that is very average at best. I actually did another video on this on the channel that is potentially not a great video. I actually don't really remember this one, but the game is very forgettable. The Messenger, followed by The Order 1886. Please give us a sequel, please. This game is fantastic. Followed by The Park, which is a very quick and easy walking sim sort of horror game. The Pedestrian, another very simple, easy sort of platforming game. There is a debug sort of developer menu, which is how you get times like this. If you were to play the game legit, it probably takes about 2 hours, I think. We then have the Pig D, which is another very quick, easy game there. And I can see the Sheep P coming up. The Playroom, followed by the Quarry. The Quarry being a completion here is a very nice one to see. This is one of the more demanding of the sort of dark picturesque style games. Sheep P, obviously. Followed by The Sinking City, which is a fantastic Lovecraftian game where you are solving crimes in a city that is slowly sinking. It's a fantastic game. I highly, highly recommend this one. Surge 2, you smashed this one out in a year as well. Very impressive. This is another one I would like to do myself at some point, followed by the Turing Test, which is a, in my opinion, very annoying puzzle game. I didn't think this one was that good. We then get some Walking Dead here with 1 and Season 2, as well as Saints and Sinners, which is a VR game that I've heard very good things about, actually. I am curious as to see whether this is one that you do plan on continuing at some point. Followed by The Witness, which it looks like all you have left for The Witness is the 15 minutes final puzzle, potentially. We then have Thomas is Alone and 3/4 Home, followed by Thunder Flash. Thymesia is a very fun spin-off to the Dark Souls sort of formula. This one's got an interesting sort of system to it where every enemy has 2 health bars effectively, and you need to kind of deplete one health bar to then hit the other one for big damage. Really cool concept, and some very fun boss fights in here. Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep. You've made good progress on this. This is obviously the standalone version of Borderlands 2's DLC. Tiny Tina's Wonderland, you smashed out in a day, which is very impressive because that game is actually pretty big. Tinykin's a fantastic indie sort of collectathon. I do really, really enjoy this game, and this is another one I would definitely recommend to people. Tome is next, another very fun one where you've got a little camera and you explore, taking photos of things. We then have Tokyo Jungle, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, Wildlands. This game glitched on me. Never forgive, never forget. Rainbow Six Extraction. I feel sorry for you, Bruce. This one I certainly know looks absolutely miserable to do. We then have both stacks of Siege. I love to see Siege here. I used to play Siege quite a bit back in the day. It's very hard to come back to now with all the different sort of characters and stuff that make things very difficult to know what's going on and how to counter things. We then have the Division 2, which you smashed out very recently. You did that in a week, which is really cool. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 is one that you've sort of chipped away at over the years as well. Tormented Souls is a really good indie Resident Evil sort of style game, which is a really cool one to see here as well. We then have 2 Toy Story games with Toy Story 3 and Toy Story Mania smashed out here as well, followed by Trails and Traces, The Tomb of Thomas Tew twice. We then have Transference, which is another fun indie sort of game, followed by Trover Saves the Universe, which I believe is made by the people who did Rick and Morty, perhaps. Tunic is next. You smashed that out in 6 days. Another absolutely fantastic indie game that we did feature on Platinum Club. 12 Minutes is a really weird one. The story is balls to the wall, insane at points. It's got Willem Dafoe, which is interesting, but the gameplay is really, really boring. Yeah, not one I could probably recommend. Also, a lot of incest. We then have Umbrella Corps, which is a very grindy multiplayer one. You smashed this out in a month, which is very impressive. This was supposed to be Resident Evil sort of entry into esports. Naturally, that didn't go well because who wanted that? Raise your hand if you actually did. We then have quite a few Uncharted's here. You've got the 100% for Thieves' End, which is amazing. I love to see that, Bruce. Congratulations. Those crushing it trophies in the DLC are very, very difficult. Followed by Drake's Fortune, The Thief collection, which is I believe Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy, and then obviously Lost Legacy here too. It is interesting to see that you haven't done 2 and 3. Are these two that you do plan on doing at some point to complete the series? Undertale you smashed out a couple of years ago. This only took you about 3.5 hours. 2 Stacks of Uno. Another game I wouldn't mind doing myself at some point, actually. Unpacking Twice, another very fun indie game where you sort of go through the years of someone's life by unpacking all of their new houses. Until Dawn Rush of Blood and Until Dawn. Expect Until Dawn on the channel very soon because I do miss it and I do kind of want to play it soon. So that might be a potentially an October Platn that if I can wait that long. Into Untitled Goose Game, fantastic game where you play as a goose. Vader Immortal Episode 1, you've done one of the trophies. Haven't done much else. Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, this is another weird sort of battle royale game that I assume is probably very dead at this point. Virginia is an interesting game where you play as a detective. It's sort of a walking sim. It's not massively special, and it does require you to play through the entire game twice. Visage Twice is a good one here. I love Visage. Visage is a very fun horror game. Another one that I actually have on the channel here. This is another early Platn that before Platn that was a proper series. Do go check it out. I dare you. We then have the Watch Dogs here with Watch Dogs 2 and Legion. No Watch Dogs 1, which is interesting. I think 2 is probably my favorite in the series personally, but I do also love Watch Dogs 1, and Watch Dogs Legion exists. I do notice that you're missing one trophy. I assume that's probably the hardcore trophy for Watch Dogs Legion. I don't blame you. We then have all of the We Were Here's with We Were Here Expeditions, We Were Here Forever, We Were Here Together, We Were Here Too, and We Were Here. Definitely a very impressive burst right there, Bruce. What Remains of Edith Finch? Fantastic game. You play as Edith Finch, a girl whose family is very cursed and have all died out as she sort of recounts all of the curse that's happened to her family over the years. It's a very fun one. Wheel of Fortune's a cool one to see here. Whispering Willows was an interesting horror game, I guess. It was kind of a side-scrolling point-and-click game where you went to a haunted house to sort of look for your father, I think it was from memory. We then have the Wolfensteins here with New Order and New Colossus that you've been chipping away at periodically. No Old Blood, however. Wreckfest, it's a fantastic game. Wreckfest is probably my favorite racing game, cross demolition derby game in recent memory. I adore this game. I adore the haptic feedback on the controller. It is an absolute banger. WWE 2K Battlegrounds, this game is absolutely infuriating. The control scheme is not fun. And some of those matches in the campaign are miserable to get through. I believe there was a triple 3-way match or something that you had to beat, and it took like half an hour at a time. The rest weren't too bad, but that one, and the Ember Moon cage fight match, I forgot about the Ember Moon cage fight match. Oh my lord, that thing was an absolute nightmare. Do let me know if you've done it and can recount the misery that I'm talking about here. We then have some Yakuzas with Yakuza 0 and Like a Dragon Twice, followed by yet another zombie defense. Yamasutsu Ari After, I've never heard of that game in my life. Zenith the Last City Twice, and to round out the list we have Zombie Army 4 Dead War, which is a very fitting way to end this because this is another game that the two of us played together from start to finish, and it's a fantastic game. It's made by the people that did Sniper Elite and stuff. But that has been today's episode of Platn That. Do let me know what you think of the account. I'm going to bring back the polls to sort of see what people think of every account. We'll rank them at the end of each season of Platn That. Do expect more content through the week. I've got a lot of stuff cooking. I've got some fun stuff cooking. I might even have a Platn That out, like a new one, besides some of the re-uploads. Hopefully next weekend, touch wood. Touch the wood. Anyway, this has been Symmetry. This has been Platn That. Until next time, I miss you. Goodbye.